What is up, you guys? I hope you are doing well, and today we're analyzing one of my favorite profiles on social media, and that's 1924 US, aka Christian Watson. Him and his wife, Elle-May Watson, live in a sort of a bubble where everything in their life resembles a period of time between 1920s to 1940s. So they have old clothing, old cameras, old trucks, everything in their life resembles that time. So today we're gonna analyze their style, then we're gonna go out and take some photographs like them so we can resemble their style, and then we're gonna edit them in Lightroom and a bit in Photoshop. So let's go down to analyze their profile. Okay guys, so this is 1924 US, and then as we can see from the description, they're graphic designers, they make branding, logos, all kinds of stuff. But we can see that their photographs have a unique style. We can see a lot of sepia tones, some hard contrast, a lot of clarity, a lot of yellows in their photographs. And this is a bit of their style. We can see old cameras. This is their antique shop. This is Christian. This is Elle-May. And this is them in their antique shop. We can see old writing machines, old cameras, old clothing, old mirrors, everything that resembles all those periods of times. They take the work to finding these objects and then they sell them. So if we scroll down the profile, we can see a bit of the style, and it's beautiful. Like this photograph, everything in this composition is pretty nice. We can see the smoke, the pipe, the old camera, the rope over there, the jacket hanging, and the old truck. Everything resembles an old time. I'm sure we all have seen tutorials about flat lay photography over there, Peter McKinnon, and another photograph, and it's pretty nice. And in this one we can see, on this one of them two in the beach running with a dog, we can see a bit of the style and what's around the colors. We can see no blues. The blues are computer muted. Normally this is a cool day and on the beach we should see a lot of blues, but they're completely muted, so it's a very minimalistic style with the sky blown out. So that's a bit of a hint to the color grading behind their style. Again, the sky is completely blown out and there's a lot of clarity in this photograph. We can see high contrast and high exposure of the whites. Also the clothing, we can see the boots, the old pants, the old jacket, the backpack with the wood on it. Everything in this photograph resembles old times. Now in this one we can see a bit of a hint towards the greens. Here they are completely muted, and in the next images we can see that the greens are turned into a kind of a yellow. So we don't see any emerald greens or forestry-like greens like a jungle. We can see that they're muted, like if it were start of winter, and it's a bit burnt. Okay, so we keep scrolling through this magical profile. Again, in this one, flat lay photography, as we know, as I mentioned, they're graphic designers. So in the middle, they would post their work, and around that, they were ambient with all kinds of objects to emphasize the situation. So flat lay photography, or their style in particular, or everything we're gonna do in this tutorial, we don't have to apply it only to their style. Imagine if you're a mechanic and you want to take photographs of all your things. Imagine putting in the middle the mechanical manual of an old Volkswagen, and around it you put all the wrenches, all the screws, everything rusted out, and that would make to a pretty unique photograph. So this is a lesson not only to emphasize or replicate their style, but in photography in general. You always have to make use of props, and everything towards the color grading and editing has to resemble that style that you want to do. So whether it be photography for a client, for a friend, or just your style, you have to emphasize with all the props, all the light, everything comes together to make a style like this one. So it takes a lot of curating and a lot of work, but it's worth it. So let's continue analyzing their style. So okay, so this is what I was talking about. He's designing some logos, and in the middle he puts his work, but we can see his clothing. We can see an old coat, old pants, and all around it, on top of a beautiful wooden table, there are all his pens and pencils that he uses to do his work. And you can do this or implement this to any kind of photography, guys. Okay, now so let's jump into Elle-May's profile and see the differences between the two styles. And as we can see, Elle-May uses a lot of more sepia tones and black and white. Also, she drops the shutter speed a lot, so her photographs have some movement. So we can see that the style is a little different. It's a bit less harsh on the shadows, on the contrast, but it still resembles that old vibe with the colors, with the yellows. Now we can see this photograph, both of them uploaded it, so we can see the differences. We can see clearly that Elle-May's is a lot softer, less harsh contrast, less clarity, while Christian is a lot more emphatic in his style, a stronger style. Okay, so that's Christian Watson and Elle-May. Now let's go out and take some photos, but for that, first we need some things. First, we need new clothing. Okay, now talking about the clothes, it doesn't even have to be old clothes. I've got a jacket that looks like it was worn in the World War II, some suspenders, a white tee with buttons. We're gonna change this with a blue t-shirt that goes all the way down the buttons, and some pants and the boots on, plus the hat. So that's all. Now something else is missing, and that's the props. So let's see them right this. Okay guys, so these are the props, a bunch of old cameras, a beautiful Rolleiflex, Pentax, an Olympus, exposimeter right here, and an old pipe that I stole from my father. I don't smoke pipe, so I'm gonna add the smoke and the fire in post. So, okay guys, so let's go out and shoot some photos. the clothing, the boots, the cameras. So let's go on and shoot. For the first image, I'm going to use the 30mm from Sigma, and I'm going to pose right around here. Going to put the tripod in because I want that contrast with the background. Okay guys, for the next image we're gonna try and do the flat lay photography that Christian does. So we're gonna put, I'm an architect, I'm a graphic designer, so I'm gonna put a sketchbook in the middle and around all the aspects of camera and drawing that I can find. So let's see how it goes. Okay guys, so what we want is to make a composition around this book or the sketchbook. So we don't want everything towards one side, we want it to be balanced. So we're gonna have to put some objects around here, like the camera, the exposimeter, and make a nice composition that it's well distributed and well balanced. Now I'm going to sit right here, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and maybe hold a cup of coffee, maybe put the piper in the middle, and let's just put in some other elements to emphasize the situation, maybe my jacket over here, and that's about it. Now let's see how it goes. Okay guys, for the next image we're going to use an old chair as a prop. Well, I think it looks kind of vintage, so we're going to use a book and emphasize all the props posing through the window or looking toward the camera or whatever. So let's go and see how it's done. Okay guys, for the final image I'm gonna use Emmett, my dog, as a prop. So let's go find him. Wait open. Hola Emmett. Hola, güero, hola. ¿Me vas a ayudar? Sí. Okay guys, as I'm walking through the forest with Emmett, I'm going to pose a tripod right here with a camera, and over there in that little trunk I'm going to pose with Emmett and use a Sigma 56mm to get some good subject isolation. So let's see how it goes. Okay guys, back in the studio, I just want to remind you how important it is to ambient the photographs correctly before you press the shutter. The importance of clothing, the props, and the light in general, everything that comes in to creating a style such as unique as theirs. It's heavily curated, but it's not just the editing. Everything that comes into a photograph is important. So now let's jump into Lightroom and see how to edit the colors. Maybe we're gonna jump into Photoshop a bit to add some tattoos. I lack any tattoos and I don't smoke pipe, so we're gonna add them in Photoshop. So let's jump in and do the preset, guys. Okay guys, once in Lightroom we can see the images that we took. In this case, I've color coded them. In red we have the points of the first shoot. In yellow we have the ones with the chair inside. Then in green we have the ones that was posing with my dog Emmett. And lastly but not least, we have the flat lay photography. Okay, so let's start off with this one and go to the develop tab. First, what I'm going to do is amp up the temperature a bit to 6200 to make the image a lot more towards the sepia tones. Then tint I'm not going to move, and exposure will depend on each image. But the contrast we will move up to 25%. Highlights are going to go up as well to 60. What we're doing with the highlights is creating a bit of contrast with the white of the sky to make it a little bit more blown out. Then the shadows are going to go up plus 80. Okay, now the image looks a bit bright, but remember, we're still going to bring the shadows back down with a minus 35 in the blacks, and the whites we're going to pull them down to minus 15. Okay, now in presence, clarity is one of the things that differentiates Elle-May's profile from Christian's. Now, while Christian uses a plus 30 around there of clarity, we can see that the image has a lot more punch and a lot more contrast. Elle-May uses a negative 30, and as we can see with a negative 30, we can see that the image is a lot softer, resembling a bit the images taken with an analog film camera, because most of the lenses from the analog film cameras aren't as sharp as the ones that we use today. So we're going to leave it at 30, and then vibrance we're not going to move, but saturation we are going to decrease it to a minus 16. Okay, we can see what we've done so far with Y on our keyboard, and it's looking pretty good. Okay, next step, the tone curve. Now we're gonna put a simple S, points in the middle tones, drag the middle tones of the highlights a bit up, and the middle tones of the shadows a bit down, just a bit. And now the blacks aren't pure blacks. In Christian's photos we're gonna amp up the blacks just a little bit so they're a bit grayish. Okay, just a little bit. So the blacks are a bit gray, just about there, not too much. You can see what we've done. Okay, looks pretty good. Next we're gonna go down to HSL and color. First thing first, in saturation we're gonna put all the magentas, all the purples, all the blues, all the aquas down to 0, a minus 100. That will kill all the purples, all the blue of the sky and the water as well. Now when it comes down to yellow, green and red, we're going to put a minus 15 on red. Green, orange we're not going to move because that moves the skin tones. Yellow minus 6, and as well as a green or a minus 6. On hue, the only thing we're going to do is move the yellow towards the oranges and the green towards the yellows. As we can see, the trees are a bit more yellowish. Finally, in luminance, we're just going to move 3 sliders. Orange and yellow a plus 12 and greens a minus 9, so they're a bit more dark. Now in split toning, we're going to add a more of a teal and orange kind of look. The orange is going to be a lot like a sepia tone, so we're going to type in 50, and as we can see, it's a pretty nice orange to work with, and the saturation is just going to be around 15. And for the shadows, it's going to be 200, and as we can see, 200 is like a teal color, so we're going to leave it at 7, just a little bit, not too much. And now we can see what it's done. It's minimal, but it's right there. Now we're going to go all the way down to effects and add some grain. Now here's another difference between the two styles. Well, Elle-May uses a big amount of grain and a big size, just like that in some photos, so it's very notorious, but it drops a lot of the quality of the image. Meanwhile, Christian uses around a 45 for the amount and the size as well, so it appears in the shadows and in the background, but it's not that notorious, so we can see it and it's looking pretty good. Now the preset has been finished, so we're going to save it, hit on the plus sign on presets and put 1924 US as we name it. Now let's see how it applies on different photos. Okay, let's move into this one, the same location. Let's apply the preset and see if it needs any tweaks. Okay, it looks pretty good. It has some sort of World War II vibe in the interior. Now here we're going to have to obviously make some tweaks because the lighting is different, so we're going to put on the preset. Actually, it looks pretty good. Maybe I'm gonna go back to basic corrections and lift just a bit more the shadows and return a bit of the blacks so it's a little less dark. Maybe blow out a bit of the whites so the windows are a bit less detailed. Okay, looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit too yellow because there's all these wood plus all the temperature that we've corrected, so I'm gonna reset the temperature. Okay, looks pretty good. Now I'm just gonna crop it for Instagram, a 4:5. Now I'm gonna copy the settings that we've just entered. Right click, settings, copy settings. I'm gonna go to the next one. Okay, right click, settings, paste settings, and there we have it. Okay, now let's move on to the ones that are in the forest. Let's apply the preset. Once again, the illumination is different because it was just dusk, the sun was setting. Now let's amp a bit the exposure here, about around there. It looks pretty good. The blacks, I'm just gonna return them just a bit. And now I'm just not happy with the greens, they pop too much, so I'm gonna go to vibrance and pull them a bit down. Just around there, looks pretty good. And now let's crop it. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now we can copy these settings, or we can make another preset. I'm gonna make another preset, 1924 US at dusk. Okay, so now it's applicable to all these photos of this shoot. So now let's look at this one. Now we can add the preset that we just modified. Okay, it looks pretty good. And lastly but not least, let's go to the flat lay photography. Let's apply the preset. Okay, we apply the preset at dusk, and we have to make it a little bit darker. Maybe the whites, turn them down, and the blacks, return them just a bit. Now in this one I can see that the grain is a little bit more prominent. So what we're gonna do is go down to grain again and reduce the amount to around 30. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm just gonna crop it and center it just a bit, right around there. Okay, so this photograph in Photoshop, we're gonna add some tattoos and some little steam coming up of a coffee cup. But in this case, let's just start with this one. We're gonna right click, edit in Photoshop. Okay, so once Photoshop opens, we're gonna add all the tweaks that I mentioned before. Okay, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail here. I'm just gonna tell you broadly what I did. I just added some smoke with a brush tool, and then some tattoos with a text tool and transform, and a little bit of smoke in the pipe that I took from an image. So that's about it. We can do this with all the photographs. Okay, so once you finish, you can save it, and the image will appear in Lightroom once again next to the original, and you can close Photoshop. Okay guys, so that's 1924 US. I know it was a very long tutorial, so thanks for sticking, and if you didn't, well, you're not here right now. So if you did like the video, can you please give it a like? It really makes a difference, and consider subscribing. Remember to hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload the next video. Cheers to all of you, and see you in the next one, guys.